What's up guys, this is Desm101, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Steam game that I was actually given a copy of by a developer, and I wanted to let you know that I actually have a couple more codes left for the game, so if you're interested in getting one for yourself, stay tuned to the end to find out how. Musasabi is a game developed by Ludumify and released October 19th of 2019 on Steam. The game revolves around Risu, the flying squirrel, who must battle her way through 4 worlds, rescuing gnomes and collecting special gems in each world to defeat a boss and eventually take on the main bad guy Akujaku. It plays like a twin-stick shooter but looks more like a platformer with a classic retro gaming feel for the looks. The name is a reference to the Japanese flying squirrel called Musasabi, who as Risu you control to help the gnomes. The story is that the evil Akujaku has taken the forest gems from the gnomes and taken the gnomes as prisoners, so it's up to Risu to save the day. You start out with the brief tutorial to get the hang of the controls. You find out Risu is quite agile and able to perform a number of moves to get around the stages. She can cling to walls, float Super Mario 3 style, and quickly fire off a barrage of acorns at nearby enemies. Since it's a twin-stick style shooter affair, you are recommended to use a modern controller with analog sticks instead of the old-school D-pad method. While you can play it this way, using the face buttons to jump and shoot, you'll find it much more effective to jump glide with the R1 button, so you can use the analog sticks to navigate and shoot at the enemies. It took me a while to get adjusted to the controls, mostly because it looks like a normal 2D platformer at first, and in the early stages this is fine. But once you get up to more complex levels and boss fights, it's really essential to use the twin stick method. Once you get the hang of it, the gameplay gets fast and pretty intense as you jump around the level trying not to get killed. Risu has 3 hearts to show her hit points, and thankfully she gets a couple seconds of recovery between taking damage. She can collect health power-ups from rescuing gnomes in the stage if she has taken damage. There is additional power-ups such as weapon upgrades and a screen-clearing bomb dropped when some enemies are defeated. There is a map screen which shows all the stages in each world, which is helpful if you want to go back to previous stages to try again. Though, if you want to go back to the map, you need to choose from the menu, as from level to level the game will not return to the map screen. Each stage has a set number of gems you must collect, which brings us to the hand pointing you in the direction around Risu. This is quite helpful to the gameplay, and it's handy to navigate the maze-like levels. Though from the design perspective I would have preferred something much smaller like a thin arrow, because the cartoon glove hand just looks strange from a user interface viewpoint. Maybe a menu option to change from different display options for the guide would help. There are 4 types of enemies: bosses, flying enemies, underwater enemies, and ground-based. Each world has its own version of each of these, but their actions will be the same, only a slight difference in some of the projectile attacks. They come from spawn points tucked away throughout the level, of which some are able to be destroyed, though they will respawn after a few moments. Speaking of respawning, the enemies will constantly respawn as you kill them, so prepare to never catch a break from these little jerks. They will also zero in on any gem on the screen, hover directly over it to prevent you from getting it. They can also fire projectiles from off-screen, so there's many chances to take damage or get caught in a trap when you least expect it. The flying enemies will often have an additional trap that will disorient you, like being stuck in a bubble or reversing your controls and lighting you on fire. The boss fights are an essential part to breaking up the gameplay a bit, but they don't feel as polished as the rest of the game. They are very similar in how they presented and approached, but there's not much variety or anything very interesting about them. The game is fairly challenging once you get past the halfway point, but it's short, like only a few hours short. If you're good with twin-stick shooters, you can probably beat this really quick, but it comes across as a casual gaming experience, and so it still feels right. The graphics look pretty good for a retro-style game. Risu is very cute. In particular, I like the look of the castle stages, which have a great amount of detail and cool-looking skeleton dudes. The other worlds have a forest theme, frozen snow theme, and underwater areas. I like the gnomes a lot too with their detailed animations. For the downsides of game, there are a few. I don't really like the constantly respawning enemies, which quickly gets annoying in the later stages, and sometimes you just have to put the game down for a little bit to avoid raging, especially with how far you'll need to get between the gems in the later levels. Boss fights can feel cheap at times, and they just don't jive well with the rest of the game in my opinion, which feels more polished. But the boss fights feel like a cliche NES boss or a rushed effort. A bit more polished on the look of the character Risu, and some of the stages overall would help the appeal, as well as some more options like a different pointer, additional playable character, and game modes, maybe a little bit longer. Overall though, it's still a fun and unique game worth checking out that I'd recommend for the $4.99 price tag, especially if you like twin stick shooters and retro themed shoot 'em up gameplay. As I mentioned before, there are a couple Steam codes available that I have for this game. If you would like to be entered to receive one of these, please just make sure you're subscribed to my channel and leave a comment on this video, and within a week I will randomly select a couple people for the drawing. Alright, thanks and have a good one.